Howdy do, buckaroos. This is The Slice. Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Kelly Guimont. I have a couple of excellent guests who are here to talk to me today about the Apple event that happened earlier. So first up, I have Jeff Gamet with me. Hi, Jeff.
Kelly, I'm so happy to be here. It's
I'm
always
so
a treat to get to hang out with you.
I'm so glad you're here. And also with us today, I have Jay Miller, who is my friend, who's a developer, who wanted to come talk to us about Apple stuff. And I think Jay is partly here to talk about the new stuff and partly, much like Jeff and I, here to sort of share the misery about probably not getting anything new out of this one. Because at the end, like fools, they told us how much it was all going to cost, and we all kind of had to pass on it. So,
Yeah.
not to give anything away. Let's start with the smallest stuff and work up to the bigger things. First up, we have new iPhone colors. So, just the 13 and the 13 Pro now come in a really nice sort of Boba Fett green. I know they're calling it sort of emerald, but it looks really cool, and it's kind of foresty, and it looks really nice. I wish this color had been available sooner. I don't know why they always come back, a few months after the iPhone is released to go, oh, by the way, you could have had a green one, but haha. Um, so yeah, I think it looks really cool. Jeff, what do you think?
I think it's a nice color, and Apple does this every year. Um, they goose the iPhone sales with a new color, and I'm
Yeah.
glad that we've settled on Boba Fett green as opposed to Endor green.
No one purposely settles on Endor, Jeff. That's just good advice. Um,
That's yeah, yeah.
Is this a Galactica reference? Am I?
you don't go to Endor, you end up on Endor. That's kind of how it goes. It's sort of like certain stretches of California. Nobody sets out to go there. You just sort of end up there. Jay, what do you think of the green? Like, I didn't get a 13 at all. I have a 12 Pro, and I'm very happy with it, and that has not changed. So it's not like I'm sad I missed out on it when I ordered my 13 because I didn't get a 13 at all. But how about you?
Well, very much like you. I have a 12 mini, so and I'm actually enjoying it still. Like it's a very excellent phone, and I'm sure
Mhm.
that we can talk about the SE as well coming up soon. But I do, I like the color. I don't like it enough to get a new phone at the moment. I
Mhm.
really feel like, I mean, is this design just played out at this point? I'm not excited by it. Like, it's cool and the color is nice, and I hope that they keep that color for future generations of devices.
Mhm.
But the color itself doesn't detract from. I'm just kind of bored with this phone design as it is.
Well, the 12 and the 13, like the square side is sort of a throwback to the old one, but we've only had it for the 12 and the 13 because the 11 was still the curvy side, much like the iPhone SE, which is what we're going to talk about.
I feel like a lot of it is the combination of all of those things. Like you said, this is very much a design that's familiar to us from the 4S and like up days, and 4S to 5, 5S, and then the 6, and then like 6 through 9 had it, or 6 through 8 had its own generation, and then now we're back on the old generation but slightly
Mhm.
newer. Um I
Yeah,
don't
I like it
I
though.
lots
don't
of
know
Like,
how I
I
feel
was
buttons,
about it.
not circle buttons.
yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't dig the square sides, or the curvy sides. I don't know why. I feel like this one feels better, but I do prefer it. That's just me. But let's talk about the
Hey,
SE3 because it's the third one. And like I said, it's the sides are curved. It's very much iPhones 6 through um
through 10,
11. The 11 was curvy.
11.
So 6 through 11 were all these nice curvy sides. And so this is 13 Pro innards, the same camera as the 13, but there's no telephoto or wide angle. So it's same camera, less lenses, I believe. And it comes in a lot more affordably. So it has a home button. That's the other big difference, is there's a home button as well. So not too shabby. I
Was
mean,
this the one that had the no, never mind. I'm getting my devices mixed up because there were so many devices that were talked about. Um, I do like the affordability of this though. I mean,
yeah.
again, the design, it's an older design, so
Hmm.
people aren't buying this because it's something new. They're buying it because it's something that they can afford, which is something that we'll only say a couple of times when regarding this event.
Yeah.
But all in
I
all,
mean, it is.
it's a good price.
Yeah. Well, it comes. I think it starts at 429, and that's I think it's 64 gig. And it's the A15 Bionic, which, like I said, is what the iPhone 13 has in it. And yeah, it says 429 before trade-in. And like I said, I think that's the 64 gigabyte model. I was trying to look for it earlier and couldn't find it. And it looks interesting. As far as new hardware goes, I'm glad that the SE is continuing to be a thing that we can sort of rely on. It's the smaller screen, so it's much more along the lines, Jay, of your iPhone Mini, which I like. They finally realized people were saying, not everybody. Remember, Jeff, think way back to 2007
Mhm.
when everybody got that first iPhone, or at least everybody we knew got that first iPhone, and you would take it out of your pocket, and people would go, "Oh my God, who wants to carry around a phone that big?"
Mhm.
And that's what I think about that a lot as people go, "Why won't Apple ever make a bigger phone?" And then they put out, the Pro Max, and which is basically, like at that point, you really should just be investing in an iPad Mini that has cellular service, in my opinion. But you know, anyway, when you can measure the screen in acres, I feel like you have a little too much phone. A little.
Unless you're reading really big words, but yeah. If you need a truss to carry your phone, maybe it's too big.
It might be. Yeah. Oddly, the belt holster, no matter how big your phone is, the belt holster is still a thing, which I kind of don't understand, but I still see it. So
It's
no matter no matter how big it is, people still want to clip it to their belts, I guess. So, uh, Jay, how do you feel about the home button? That was sort of the thing that stood out to me on this one, is that they're still home buttoning some of their devices.
I mean, I'm probably joining the club here with everyone on this panel to say I'm rocking beta life. So, I mean,
Mhm.
Face ID works if you're masked. It works if you're not masked.
Mhm.
Um, it works at this point. Like,
Yeah.
and if you're not on the beta life, it'll work for you soon, whether you're masked or not.
Mhm.
I don't have any, I don't miss the home button at all. I But also it doesn't bother me like it bothers some folks of like, "Ah, it's taking up
Mhm.
real estate." I use my phone when I'm away from my computer, so it's and that's few and far between. Basically, it's computer, dad life, sleep. So my phone has taken a back seat to a lot of how I am computing these days, but I do think that for some people, it being their main device, their primary device, I can see where having more real estate works.
Mhm.
I just also think if it's your primary computing device, you're probably going to spring for the more expensive one, which immediately takes you out of this category.
Right. That's fair. I like that assessment. Um,
Yeah.
that's the primary complaint I've heard about it, is now that Face ID is an option, is that maybe the SE could be a tiny bit bigger, just to give people a little bit more screen, but also a home button. I'm glad it's around still as a viable option, because there are lots of people who like it for all kinds of reasons. Jeff is
Yeah,
apparently not one of those
look at
people.
well, okay. I think it's an awesome phone. And Apple made a bunch of very clear design decisions with VSE. And all of those design decisions play into cost. And what Apple wanted to do was make a phone that comes into a certain price range with the SE,
Mhm.
but to give you as much phone as they could for that price point. And so we
Mhm.
get the SE. All right, so get a better processor, but you don't have Face ID because the components for Face ID cost more than Touch ID, and then you have a
And
slightly
maybe
smaller
wouldn't fit
screen.
Yeah, and maybe wouldn't fit in a 4.7-inch phone,
Yeah.
that's
And
another consideration.
yes, and a lot of people look at this phone and they think, well, there's so many things Apple could have done. Yes, but the United States isn't the only market in the world, and this is a
Mhm.
phone that meets a lot of requirements for customers outside the United States. So, um, yeah, I think it's a perfectly fine phone. I am a Face ID fan because I live in a climate where wearing gloves and face masks, even if it's not like pandemic face masks, but like a scarf or something, in the winter,
Mhm.
this is common. So it's much more
Yeah.
convenient for me to unlock my phone in the winter uh, with Face ID than Touch ID. So
Yeah.
yay
Yeah.
technology.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, I like that it's an option. I do wish it was a tiny bit bigger, just for people who do have that concern. And Jeff, I think we talked about this ages ago when the iPhone 8 and the iPhone 10 made their debuts, and we talked about how the 8 still had Touch ID because at that point Touch ID was basically free. Like they'd done all
Mhm.
the R&D, it had gotten really fast, they'd done all the things they needed to do in order to make it work. And so like it didn't really, the development cost was really just being able to fit it in this slightly new chassis, which was basically the 7, with
Mhm.
a slightly different processor inside. So the Touch ID piece of it wasn't really that big of a concern. So that was the part that I sort of wondered about was oh well, they get Touch ID for free. So and in a lot of places that's still a viable option for a lot of situations. So I could see this
Mhm.
also being a nice multiple user device, which is still not a really a thing you can do with Face ID. So you can add,
Sure
3
it
different people's
is.
fingerprints or whatever. Um, well, I haven't seen it work reliably, so that's why.
What something that I think we've kind of not talked about just in this space a lot is just the accessibility angle of this.
Mhm,
I mean, you got to remember, sure, we might being people who are completely able-bodied that don't have vision issues and things like that. Imagine what happens if you hold your phone like this slightly and you're trying to unlock it.
mhm,
Like, sure, right angles, things like that. Just setting up Face ID like this would be a challenge. How do you go, and I don't know what all the accessibility parameters are. So I think having options where Face ID a little bit of a challenge, not a problem. I have
mhm,
grandparents who are, I will just say this will probably be one of the last generations of phones we buy for them for multiple reasons. But
mhm,
I don't want to have to go through that process of them having to figure out another technology piece. If I can say, "Hey, this is much like your existing phone. It's faster, it's more performant."
mhm,
Oftentimes, when you get into those later demographics, and that's not to call out age on anyone, but I mean, it's even me as I've gotten older, I hold on to my phones longer. So I can only imagine
mhm.
people who don't want to change their phones out to learn something new every single year, every 2 years, every 3 years. Having a
Yeah.
device that is very familiar to them, that's been around for 5, 6 years, while
Yep.
I'm literally on record 10 minutes ago going, I'm kind of bored with this design. I think for a lot of people, that's a feature, not a bug.
Oh, absolutely. And I think there's probably, I mean, that was the first thing I thought of when I saw it was that I have family members who have Touch ID phones now who might be interested in upgrading if they can still get a Touch ID phone, and they're not carrying around hundreds of gigabytes of files, so they don't need a ton of storage. And when they go try to get something new, if they can still get something that works the way that they're familiar with, then they're usually pretty good with it. And so yeah, yeah, I think I agree with you that the familiarity is probably an advantage for a lot more people than are probably given credence by a lot of folks. Because I'm sure there's somebody out there railing against the Touch ID feature on this phone right now. If you're really quiet, I'm sure you can hear them. Um, we also got a new iPad Air. Well, like a revised iPad Air. It's it's a new update to it. New colors. We got it got a processor update because now the Air rocks the M1 just like the iPad Pro does. It's got center stage, and now when you buy one, if it's got cellular service, you can be all about that 5G life, and that's pretty good too. I like the colors. Of course, none of them match any of the colors of any of the other things that we've seen, which
Huh.
is still a thing that really
no
bugs
green?
me. But yeah, because in like 4 months they're gonna tell us about that, Jay. Like we're gonna hear at Dub that there's a green one now. Like I like that they updated it. I'm curious what this, since we got an Air this time, I'm curious what what we're going to get in the next Mini. So Jeff, do you want to speculate?
I think the next time we get a mini update, it will get an M processor. I think the bigger question, at least for me right now, is how is Apple going to realistically differentiate the iPad Pro from the other iPad models now? Because
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter how great the screen is when you have the software limitations we do, the operating system limitations. It becomes a very difficult to get someone to look at an iPad Pro right now when we have an
Mm-hmm.
iPad and an iPad Air with M processors that will cost them significantly less, and for practical purposes will give them everything that they're going to get for the more expensive iPad Pro.
Yeah. And that was my first thought was, okay, so if they're going to give us the M1 in the Air Pro today so that we can tell why you want an Air, why you'd want a Pro, right? Maybe the Pro gets the M1 Pro chip, whatever it's going to be. So I'm curious what's going to end up being on the horizon for that. Jay, what do you think?
Apple always has these moments where it's like the lineup is a little awkward.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're about
Mhm.
to enter the iPad awkward line, at least for the next 6 months or so. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
at this rate and at this price point, they have to be planning a new iPad Pro in the
Oh
fall.
yeah.
Because why would
Mm-hmm.
like Jeff said, why would I pay twice as much for an iPad that has the same chip? And I'm sure someone will point out that shortcuts runs like zero point 0.3 seconds faster, and if you're a pro user,
Or the
all
screen is
17
this
pro
much more
shortcuts use.
fluid, or yeah.
Exactly. There are going to be people that can justify themselves into the $1,500, iPad Pro. Uh, that said, they are, if they're doing anything, what they're doing is saying, okay, all the folks that thought they needed the Pro, you no longer need the Pro.
Mm-hmm.
The Pro is not your thing. The Pro is, again, not the label for Pro now means something else yet again. And
Yeah.
we have to figure out what that thing is, because as I was screaming at my screen, Apple has introduced more options. I remember when back in the day, there was a whole like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
let's cull down the things and let's make a few great products. And now we're getting into
Mm-hmm.
that space again where there are so many options. And with that comes a lot of
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
confusion as to what am I supposed to buy? As the person
Yep.
that's not an iOS developer, but still needs development power, as someone who makes
Mm-hmm.
video, but does it on YouTube instead of on the big screen,
Right.
am I supposed to spend $5,000 on all of the things? And to me, the iPad is just an extension of that, because it's
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be the thing when you're away from your computer, or the thing that instead of your computer, for some people, it is a computer replacement. And
Yeah.
now
Mhm.
the same problems that existed and still exist in the Mac line are now coming to the iPad line.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about the Mac line. I mean, that's as good a transition as any, talking about confusing because We got two great big headlines today, I would say. First, we get the Big Mac. There's a revised mini. The whole thing is called Mac Studio. I saw somebody call it the two-piece iMac, because
Should have
not
been called the Big
only
Mac.
it should have been called the Big Mac, right? Not only because it runs. Uh, it's a long story. So, this machine, it's I don't know how many minis high it is. Is it a Smurf? It's 3 minis high, right? Like this machine is the new horsepower thing because it's got the MK Ultra chip, the M1 Ultra chip in it. Um which is ridiculous. It's basically two mere mortal M1 chips hooked together in a really interesting way that Johnny Strugi went through in detail from his lab, which is no doubt at the base of a volcano in an unspecified location. I just always feel like that's a very he gives me a very Bond villain vibe, and I love it very much. So I hope he gets to keep coming to us from there because it's great. It's got loads of ports. It's got the M1 Ultra chip. And because Apple could not give you this monster machine and allow you to hook it to a mere mortal display, Apple got back into the screen game for some people. This monitor doesn't cost as much as a car, like the old one did. And you can now get this Apple display for, I think it was $15.99. Was that was the magical price on the Studio display? So the whole thing is called the Mac Studio. The monitor has center stage, which we've seen before. It's got some really nice speakers built into the bottom, which I thought was kind of interesting. This is sort of the Retina iMac display, I think is mostly what it looks like. And it's and yes, thank you. The screen is showing me now. It says $15.99. The follow-up bit of news from this is that when the store came back, because the Apple Store, the online Apple Store went down during the event and was gone. And
Right,
then
because
when
Apple still doesn't know how to use the CMS.
well, it came back up. And the 27-inch iMac is not there. And it seems like the thing that they did to try and sort of appease people about the fact that that machine had gone away was you can buy your Magic Mouse and your Magic Keyboard for this machine in black if you want to, which is apparently the
Not
thing that
space
most
gray.
people are. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's. I mean, starlight, moonlight, whatever they're calling it now. Those. I think it's cool that they finally got a decent camera in the display. That took long enough. But it's still $1,600 monitor. I mean,
It's a $1,600 monitor, but
I also don't know
you
what
have
people
to
are
take
paying
into
for.
account the market
Yeah,
that
I
they're
don't know what
going
those
for.
people would be paying for a monitor anyway. So I don't know if this is an
Here-
attractive
more.
option or not.
No, not more.
Really?
This was the
Okay.
question that I had. So I have a 5K LG display, and you can get that 5K LG display on Apple's website for $1,200.
Okay.
And I'm just wondering, but what's the difference other than one comes with a flex mount adjustable thing that no one's ever going to acknowledge because it's a monitor?
Well, the thing I
Well, the
saw.
Flex thing is going to cost you $400 more.
The other thing I saw was that you may want to try. Well, it runs iOS. Like the other thing I saw about it was that there's some sort of lightweight iOS that this monitor actually has on it, which sounds kind of nifty, but also sounds terrifying if that's true. So
It's your iPad. It's the iPad Big.
Yeah, it's an A13 processor running a flavor of iOS, and it has it's like a big iPad without a touch surface. Um, yeah,
Someone else called it a 27-inch iPhone, which I sort of appreciated in a weird way.
yeah, there's
But
that. With the camera and the speakers that are built into it,
mhm,
um, and the hub that's built in,
mhm.
with enough power to charge a Mac laptop. It's pretty clear that Apple is looking at this as not a consumer display.
No.
I'll call it a prosumer display.
Mhm. I think this is the first time in a long time that word feels appropriately applied to something from Apple. They've used pro on a lot of things that aren't necessarily pro level. Um, I mean, the iMac Pro was in its moment, a pro level machine, and then they just kept selling it after that was no longer true. So, it continued, and we just talked about the iPad Pro, which has the same sort of problem. Um, there are a few uh there are a variety of things that I think could be that used to be prosumer, like they sort of carved out this section where they would have sort of much nicer than lots of people are going to buy, but not quite like weapons grade, right? We're at like pharmaceutical grade hardware, and that was and for a lot of instances, that was going to be more than enough for a person who was reasonably demanding. And this definitely, especially given the accompanying video for these two devices, this is this seems like the bit that I've been waiting to see in see in the wilderness, in the wild, um because there are finally folks who are your hardcore video producers, your hardcore audio producers, the people that have the people who are still using like a blue and white iMac, right? Or one of the 50-pound aluminum models because there's an Intel processor in it and they're not running anything more recent than like High Sierra because everything works. I can get the machine to do everything I needed to do, and I'm not interested in upgrading and screwing all of that up. And so finally having folks who were given a significant amount of time to develop something that runs really well on Apple Silicon feels like the thing that kind of needed to have, like, now that we've kind of got all the consumer stuff out of the way last year, right? This year, we're going to give you, the M1 Pro and the M1 Max earlier this year, or late last year, I mean, with the laptop lines, and then all of a sudden we've got this machine that's giving us like the hardcore, the things for the hardcore folks who are doing the video that Jay was talking about earlier, people doing video and audio production that goes up on a big screen, not something that goes up on a YouTube channel. So I'm curious, like, Jay, as a person who does a lot of video production, I know you said it's not for movie studios or anything, but does this machine have appeal for you?
The Mac Studio, absolutely. The monitor, there's no chance. I mean, I still I double down. This is the LG display. I would probably be convinced that it's the exact same display with because it has all the same features. So
Mhm,
the the problem that I see with this market is kind of the one that we've talked about, which is confusion. Um,
mhm.
Everywhere else in the world, everywhere else in the technological space, things are getting more powerful and cheaper. Apple is getting more powerful and still expensive.
Well,
And I
I
I
don't
love
disagree. Let me just say I don't disagree.
yeah, I just think that for me, do I see myself in a brand new I'm going to call it the Mac Big, so that the arches don't come after me. Definitely, I think that
Okay.
that's a no brainer, especially as someone who's still rocking an Intel MacBook. I
Mhm.
think it makes sense for me to make that transition to the M space, and this is affordable and still M1 Max, I still get a
Mhm.
really good one. But this event wasn't for YouTubers. This wasn't for SoundCloud rappers or, the
Mhm.
next TikTok sensations. This was for the people who will have a YouTube channel where they'll get a demo unit and they'll talk about it, and people will be like, look at what Apple's doing. This will be for the people who are making movies or who don't care and just have enough money that they can spend on all of
Mhm.
these things. I love that they showed all of these different young, diverse creators in the promo. And in my mind, the first thing that I said was, nobody in this commercial is getting one if Apple doesn't get it for them, because some of these kids look like they're in college still.
Yeah.
These aren't the tools for them. Apple, if they really
Mhm.
want to make those devices, they can. And there's an argument to say that they have. I just think that them trying to liberate the masses and for creativity by selling them a $5,000 computer package is not the right messaging, because it's already been posted out on the blogs. Apple has announced products that none of us will buy. And that's just kind of the end of it.
You know, I think I think part of the reason that I think this might work is because you could use the machine without the display, and you could probably hook that display up to another machine, whatever that may be. Um, so like one or the other is probably okay. I feel like you've given us a good wrap there though, so I'm gonna go ahead and go with that. Jeff, do you have any final thoughts?
I think that Apple did an amazing job of showing us, but more importantly, showing other chip makers like Intel and AMD what they are capable of and how quickly they can iterate and improve on the chips that they're designing.
Mhm.
So Apple created a a new computer that is really cool and is really powerful, where a Mac Mini will do what most of the people that are lusting over this machine need.
Mhm.
But at the same time, they shot that big round over the bow of Intel and AMD,
Yeah.
and Intel's plan of beating Apple at the chip game, which is this is not a thing I ever thought I would have been saying, but here we are. Intel cannot beat Apple at the chip game anymore.
No. And honestly, this is one of the things I was very interested to see was basically what comes after the M1. And what first came after the M1 was the Pro and the Max. We got those first, and then and now we have the Ultra. And then, and like the Ultra just looks like a monster. Like I can't even imagine what it's going to take to rate becoming M2. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
that's what I was wondering is, are they innovating, or are they creating adapters intern they've added dongles to their M1 chip so that you can attach another M1 chip to it. It's
yes,
dongle town all the way down.
Dongle Town. Yes. So I mean, really like that. I also thought that was kind of creative, honestly. It's the way that they did it in order to be able to harness all of that and turn the thing that they had into a pro machine. Because like if you just look at what the Geekbench and all the processing things that they were showing on that, like watching that stuff not flint, of course, I know a lot of developers who were like, I can only make a cup of coffee, not make and drink it while I wait for Xcode, and it's gonna be so much faster. And but I really do hope somebody that I know ends up somehow with one of those and is able to really put it to the test. Somebody else said like, I can finally add a third Slack, and somebody else was like a sixth Google Chrome tab, like
Mhm.
so I do love a hot take fits in a tweet when they're entertaining like that. So we'll have to see how that goes. Thanks so much, both of you, for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. Jay, where can people find you?
You can find me on the socials at KJAY Miller, as well as at kjymiller.com, YouTube, LinkedIn, all those things. And then also on Relay FM, where I host a show about productivity called Conduit.
All right. right. And Jeff, where can the people find you?
How about Gamet on Twitter and Instagram, and youtube.com/Gamet for my videos, and on a bunch of shows, uh, like a bunch of shows. The most recent, though, is the Context Machine. Brian Chaffin and I have teamed back up, and we are doing our show, the
All right.
Context Machine.
I love the Context Machine. All right. You can find me here here on the Slice at the Slice YouTube channel. As soon as we have enough followers to get a legitimate URL, I will start handing that out left, right, and center. You
Like and
can
subscribe, smash that button, ring the bell, all those
smash
things.
smash
Do
the
it.
like button.
Mhm.
I don't know what it is the young people say when you do this sort of thing. So I
Make
don't
your
know anymore.
friends do it too.
Okay,
Smash,
yeah.
smash, and ring. There we go.
Yeah, they make sure make sure you tell 2 friends and they tell 2 friends and so on and so on. That's how that goes. So yeah, ask your folks. That's gonna do it for us. Stay tuned to the Slice where we will talk about more things Apple, especially from the event today. Thanks so much.